The last sound my baby heard was his father hanging up on me. I was lying at the bottom of the marble staircase in our penthouse, one hand beneath my stomach and the other wrapped around my phone. Blood had already soaked through the pale blue dress I had worn to dinner alone. "Dante," I whispered when he answered. I fell. "Something is wrong with the baby. Please send the car. Please come home." Music thundered behind him. A string quartet. Champagne glasses. The low roar of 200 people celebrating someone who was not his wife. "Sloane, not tonight." His voice was cold enough to make me forget the pain for 1 second. "I'm bleeding." A woman laughed near him. Bianca Russo. His childhood sweetheart. His advisor. The woman Dante had placed in charge of every dollar I was allowed to spend, every servant I could hire, every dress I could wear, and every decision I made as Donna of the Valenti family. "You said the same thing last month when I stayed late at the club," Dante said. Bianca was right. Every time attention moves away from you, there is suddenly an emergency. This isn't attention. I can't feel him moving. Our son had kicked every evening at 9. 3 steady taps beneath my ribs, as though he was knocking on a door from the other side. That night, there was nothing. "Call Dr. Levin," Dante said. "The private medical account is frozen. They want authorization or $1,000 retainer." Bianca cancelled my card again. There was a pause. For one desperate moment, I thought he finally understood. Then Bianca's voice floated through the phone. "Dante, the auction is starting." He exhaled. "Sloane, you are the Donna. You have guards, staff, and a doctor on call. Stop humiliating yourself over $1,000. I will deal with this when I get home. Please." The word came out broken. "Our baby." He ended the call. I stared at the dark screen. Dante Valenti was the most feared Don in Chicago. Men lowered their voices when his name was spoken. Judges returned calls before sunrise. Police commanders attended his charity dinners. He could move $10 million before breakfast. His wife could not find $1,000 to save their child. I called every number I knew. The head of security said all available cars had been reassigned to Bianca's birthday gala at the Palisade Hotel. The house manager reminded me that Bianca had restricted my emergency spending after I failed last month's household review. 2 soldiers refused to leave their posts without Dante's command. I called my sister-in-law. No answer. I called 3 women who smiled beside me at family dinners and called me their Donna. One said her husband would be angry if she became involved. Another told me to be patient because Dante always knew best. The third transferred $500, then called back crying and asked me to return it before her husband checked the account. By the time I found a driver willing to take my wedding earrings as payment, 48 minutes had passed. At St. Catherine Medical Center, they rushed me into surgery. I woke beneath fluorescent lights with an empty ache inside my body. A nurse sat beside me holding my hand. Her eyes told me before her mouth did. "I'm sorry, Mrs. Valenti. My son had been alive when I fell. He still had a heartbeat when the ambulance team reached me. But the placental abruption had gone untreated too long. At 11:36 p.m., his heart stopped. The doctor asked whether I wanted to hold him. I said yes. He weighed 4 pounds and 9 ounces. His hair was black, just like Dante's. His fingers were long. His mouth had the tiny serious curve I had seen in every Valenti family photograph. I named him Luca because that was the name Dante and I had whispered in the dark months earlier, before Bianca began deciding which name sounded sufficiently respectable for a future heir. I held Luca until the sun rose over Lake Michigan. Dante did not come. His gala photographs appeared online before breakfast. In one, Bianca wore a silver gown and Dante fastened a diamond necklace around her throat. In another, they stood beneath a shower of white rose petals while the auctioneer announced Dante's final gift. A $12 million estate in Montecito. Purchased in Bianca Russo's name. At 7:12 a.m., Dante finally called. I watched the phone ring until it stopped. Then I kissed my son's forehead and handed him to the nurse. Something inside me had died with him. But not everything. The part that remained was colder than grief. And it had already decided to leave. I discharged myself the next afternoon. The doctor protested. My blood pressure was unstable. The incision across my abdomen could reopen. I had lost too much blood and should not walk without assistance. I signed every form. No one from the Valenti family came to collect me. The driver who had accepted my earrings waited outside in the same dented black sedan. His name was Omar, and he kept his eyes on the road when I climbed into the back seat wearing hospital clothes beneath my winter coat. Where to? He asked. Halston Tower. North Astor Street. He looked at me in the mirror. Everyone in Chicago knew Halston Tower was Valenti territory. You sure? No, I said. But take me there anyway. The penthouse was quiet when I entered. Someone had cleaned the blood from the staircase. My blue dress was gone. The broken vase I had reached for during the fall had been replaced. The marble shone as though nothing had happened. That was the Valenti way. Remove the evidence. Polish the surface. Punish anyone who mentioned the stain. I moved slowly toward the bedroom, one hand against the wall. My suitcase was still inside the closet. I placed it on the bed and began packing. 3 dresses. 2 pairs of jeans Dante disliked because he said a Donna should never look ordinary. My mother's photograph. The silver locket I had worn when the sisters at St. Martha's Orphanage found me outside their kitchen door. Luca's ultrasound pictures. I did not take the jewelry Dante had given me. The diamonds felt like collars now. When I opened the bottom drawer of his desk to retrieve my passport, I found an auction folder from Bianca's gala. The Montecito estate receipt lay on top. $12 million. Below it were invoices for custom jewelry, a vintage Ferrari, and a year-long membership at a private resort in the south of France. Total value, $17,400,000. I thought of the hospital administrator asking whether anyone could authorize a $1,000 transfer. My vision blurred. Voices came from the study next door. Dante was home. I had not heard the private elevator. I closed the drawer and stood very still. His deep voice carried through the partially open door. Marco, was Sloane really at the hospital begging people for $1,000? The underboss answered carefully. That is what the driver reported. She fell at the penthouse. There was bleeding. Dante scoffed. Sloane is my Donna. She has men watching her 24 hours a day. How could anything serious happen without security calling me? Because security had been serving champagne at Bianca's gala. Marco said nothing. Dante continued. She wanted me to leave Bianca's party. That is all. Bianca warned me Sloane would create a scene tonight. The hospital called several times, boss. And I told them I would handle my wife privately. Should I send someone now? No. Let her calm down. Ice spread through me. Marco hesitated. The medical report mentioned the baby. A glass touched wood inside the study. Dante's voice became flatter. Sloane has threatened miscarriage every time Bianca disciplines her. She is 7 months pregnant, emotional, and spoiled. If Bianca is not strict with her, how is an orphan going to earn the family's respect? My hand moved over my empty stomach. Dante said, almost gently, she will understand my intentions later. Tears slipped down my face. Fuck his intentions. Fuck his rules. Fuck his Donna. The second the doctor called Luca's time of death, I had stopped belonging to Dante Valenti. I zipped the suitcase. The sound was louder than I expected. The study went silent. Footsteps approached. I picked up the suitcase with both hands even though pain tore across my incision. Dante appeared in the doorway. He still wore the black tuxedo from Bianca's gala. His bow tie hung loose around his neck. A faint smear of silver glitter marked his collar. His eyes moved from my hospital bracelet to my face. Then to the suitcase. Sloan? For the first time since I had known him, the most powerful man in Chicago looked uncertain. Why are you dressed like that? I looked at him. I went to the hospital. His expression tightened with irritation rather than fear. I know. Marco told me. We can discuss this after you rest. There is nothing to discuss. I pulled the suitcase past him. Dante caught the handle. Where are you going? Away. Do not be childish. I turned. My movement was slow, but the hatred in my eyes made him release the suitcase. Our son died last night. The words landed between us. Dante did not move. His mouth opened. No sound came out. Luca had a heartbeat when I called you, I said. He did not have one by the time I found enough money to reach the hospital. Dante's face emptied. No. The doctors tried for 18 minutes. No. He grabbed my shoulders. Pain shot through my body. I did not react. You are lying. That is what Bianca taught you to believe. His hands fell. Dante stepped backward as though I had struck him. Where is he? At St. Catherine's. He stared at me. Why didn't anyone tell me? I almost laughed. They did. You were busy buying Bianca a house. His knees hit the floor. The sound echoed through the bedroom. Dante Valenti, the Don men feared, covered his face and broke apart at my feet. I felt nothing. When he reached for me, I stepped around him. Sloan, please. I kept walking. Please do not leave. I paused at the elevator. Behind me, he was crying. Once, that sound would have destroyed me. Now it only reminded me that Luca had died without hearing his father's voice. You made me your Donna, I said. Bianca made me your prisoner. And I allowed both of you to call it love. The elevator doors opened. Dante stood too quickly. You cannot leave this family. I looked at him one last time. Watch me. I had nowhere to go. That was the truth Dante had built his control around. I had no parents. No family name anyone respected. No bank account Bianca could not monitor. No car registered solely to me. Even the phone in my coat belonged to Valenti Holdings. For 4 years, Dante had called that protection. Bianca called it training. I called Omar. He returned to Halston Tower without asking why the Donna of Chicago's strongest crime family stood on the sidewalk carrying one suitcase. Hotel? He asked. Not one connected to the Valentis. He thought for a moment. There is a small place near Lincoln Square. Family owned. Cash only if needed. I have $83. Omar looked at my hospital bracelet. Then tonight is free. I wanted to refuse. Pride was a luxury I could no longer afford. The room above the Lebanese bakery smelled like cinnamon and old heat. I locked the door, placed a chair beneath the handle, and collapsed before taking off my coat. I woke to pounding at 3 in the morning. For one terrifying second, I thought Dante had found me. Mrs. Valenti? A man's voice. Calm. Educated. Familiar. My name is Julian Hale. I represented Samuel Mercer. I knew the name. Samuel Mercer had been the only person who visited me regularly at St. Martha's Orphanage. He was a quiet shipping executive who brought books instead of toys and taught me how to read financial statements before I understood why anyone needed them. He died 6 months before my wedding. Julian Hale had handled his estate. Dante had forbidden me to meet him. He said Julian wanted to use Samuel's death to manipulate me. I moved the chair but kept the chain fastened. Julian stood in the hallway wearing a charcoal overcoat. He was in his late 30s, with dark blonde hair and the tired blue eyes of a man accustomed to delivering truths people did not want. He held up both empty hands. "Omar called me." I looked toward the stairwell. "Why would he know you?" "Because Samuel paid for his cab license after Omar testified against one of the old port companies. Samuel asked him to contact me if you ever left Dante without security." Even dead, Samuel had anticipated a door I might need. "I don't need a lawyer. Your husband has already reported you medically unstable and missing." My hand tightened around the chain. "How do you know?" "A petition was delivered to a Cook County judge 40 minutes ago. Dante is requesting temporary protective custody over you as his pregnant wife." My voice disappeared. Julian continued carefully. "The petition does not mention that the baby died. Dante had moved quickly. Grief had not stopped him from protecting his ownership." I opened the door. Julian entered but remained near the wall. He saw the blood on my hospital clothes where the incision had reopened. His expression hardened. "You need a doctor." "No Valenti Hospital." "Agreed." "No police connected to Dante." "Agreed." "And I am not going back." Julian met my eyes. "That is why I am here." He took me to a private medical clinic in Evanston, where an obstetric surgeon repaired 2 torn sutures and ordered strict rest. Afterward, Julian drove me to a brick townhouse on West Roscoe Street. The property belonged to a legal trust under Samuel Mercer's name. Inside, Julian placed a thick folder on the dining table. "Samuel did not leave you nothing," he said. "Dante told me the estate was insolvent." Dante lied. The folder contained shares, trust documents, and corporate agreements. Samuel had owned 31% of Lake Meridian Logistics, the legitimate shipping company that controlled 2 cargo terminals, 6 warehouses, and the distribution contract supporting most of Valenti Holdings. Those shares now belonged to me. I stared at the number. "This cannot be real." "It is." "Why have I never received income?" "Because 3 months after your wedding, you signed a voting proxy and management authorization giving Dante control." "I never signed that." Julian turned to the signature page. My name appeared beneath a digital seal. The witness was Bianca Russo. "She brought me papers every week," I whispered. "Household budgets. Charity approvals. Family rules." One of them contained this authorization. The room tilted. Dante had not married a penniless orphan. He had married the woman whose shares kept his legitimate empire alive. Then he hid the truth and gave Bianca control of my finances so I would never discover it. Julian opened a second document. Samuel anticipated coercion. The proxy can be revoked immediately if your spouse commits adultery, financial abuse, or acts against your bodily safety. What happens if I revoke it? Lake Meridian's accounts require your approval. Valenti payroll clears through Lake Meridian. So do the Palisade Hotel, Halston Tower, the Montecito Estate, and most of Bianca's gifts. I thought of Dante kneeling on the bedroom floor. Then of Luca's silent face. "Freeze everything," I said. Julian studied me. "This will start a war." He already started one. At 8:01 a.m., Julian filed the proxy revocation. At 8:07, Lake Meridian froze all transactions requiring my authorization. At 8:16, 3 Valenti construction projects lost access to payroll. At 8:22, the Palisade Hotel's operating account was suspended. At 8:40, the title company handling Bianca's Montecito estate refused to complete the transfer. At 9:03, Dante called me. I watched his name flash across Julian's secure phone. I did not answer. He called again. And again. By 10, there were 23 missed calls. At 11, the front gate camera showed 6 black SUVs stopping outside the Roscoe Street townhouse. Julian looked through the window. He found us faster than I expected. He owns half the city. Not half. He simply trained everyone to behave as though he does. Dante stepped from the lead vehicle. He wore a black overcoat over an open-collared shirt. He had not shaved. His face looked older than it had 12 hours earlier. Marco Santori followed him with 4 armed men. Julian opened the front door before they could knock. No weapons inside. Marco gave a humorless smile. You think this is a courthouse? No. Courthouses have fewer cameras. Julian pointed toward the security lens above the door. Every face, weapon, and threat is being transmitted to 3 federal offices. Dante's gaze moved past him and found me at the end of the hallway. The grief in his eyes was almost enough to awaken the woman who had loved him. Almost. Sloane. I did not move. He entered alone. Julian remained within sight. Dante stopped several feet away. I went to the hospital. My throat closed, but I kept my face still. They let me hold him. His voice cracked. He looked like you. He looked like himself. Dante lowered his head. You named him Luca. Someone had to. He flinched. For a few seconds, neither of us spoke. Then the dawn returned. His shoulders straightened. His voice became controlled. Come home. I almost admired how quickly he transformed grief into command. No. This is not a request. Julian stepped forward. Dante did not look at him. Sloane is my wife. She is also my client, Julian said. You have wanted her money since Samuel died. Julian's expression did not change. Your wife did not know she had money until last night. That should concern you more than my motives. Dante looked at me. You froze the accounts. I reclaimed them. Thousands of employees depend on those companies. Then perhaps you should not have built your empire on a signature stolen from your wife. His jaw tightened. Bianca handled the paperwork. You spent the money. I did not know she buried the proxy among household documents. Did you know Samuel left me the shares? Silence. That was the answer. I stepped closer. Did you know? Dante looked away. I intended to tell you when you were ready. Ready for what? The family. The businesses. Responsibility. I laughed once. The sound was empty. I was responsible enough to carry your heir, host your dinners, memorize the names of every captain's wife, and smile while Bianca reduced my allowance to $200. But I was not ready to know I owned the company paying for your empire. Bianca's methods became excessive. You gave her permission. I wanted the family to respect you. You wanted me dependent. Dante's voice rose. I wanted you safe. Our son died because I could not access $1,000. The words stopped him. I continued. You bought Bianca $17 million in gifts while I begged strangers to save Luca. Do not speak to me about safety. Dante pressed one hand against his mouth. For a moment, he looked close to collapse. Then he reached into his coat and placed a document on the table. A medical guardianship petition. Withdraw the account freeze and come home, he said. I will dismiss this. Julian swore softly. I looked at the document. Dante was bargaining with my freedom less than 24 hours after learning our child was dead. Something final settled inside me. I removed my wedding ring. Dante watched as I placed it on top of the petition. "File it," I said. "Let a judge hear why the Donna of the Valenti family had no money, no car, no medical access, and no authority over property registered in her name." His face changed. He had expected grief. He had expected anger. He had not expected me to stop fearing him. "If you do this publicly," he said, "there will be consequences." There already were. I touched the empty place where Luca had lived. "You just did not pay them." Dante left without the ring. It remained on the guardianship petition after the SUVs disappeared, a black diamond set in platinum, large enough to buy the emergency care I had begged for 100 times over. Julian placed both inside an evidence envelope. "He will return," he said. "I know. Next time he may not come alone." He was not alone today. Today he still believed you could be persuaded. I looked through the front window at the tire tracks darkening the snow. What happens when he understands I cannot? Julian did not soften the truth. Then he decides whether he loves you more than he needs to control you. You already know the answer. I know the answer he has given until now. People can choose differently when consequences become real. I turned toward him. "You think Dante can change?" "I think expecting change is dangerous. Preparing for every version of him is safer." That afternoon, Lake Meridian's board met by emergency video conference. For years, I had imagined corporate boards as rooms full of intelligent people making complicated decisions. The Valenti board was mostly men who had learned to call obedience strategy. They demanded that I restore Dante's proxy. They reminded me that families depended on payroll. They warned that rival organizations would smell weakness. Not one asked whether I could stand without tearing my stitches. Not one mentioned Luca. I listened until the oldest director, Bernard Cole, told me Samuel Mercer had trusted Dante to guide me. "Mr. Cole," I said, "Samuel's trust specifically allowed me to revoke that guidance if my spouse committed adultery, financial coercion, or endangered my health. Which condition would you like me to ignore?" The screen went silent. Julian almost smiled beside me. I continued. "Payroll for ordinary employees will be released. Executive bonuses, family distributions, private aircraft, and discretionary purchases remain frozen. Any director who objects may explain in writing why Bianca Russo's Montecito estate matters more than warehouse workers receiving wages." 2 directors immediately withdrew their objections. Power, I learned, did not always require shouting. Sometimes it was simply knowing which account paid for the room. At 6 that evening, Bianca arrived. She came in a white Bentley registered to one of my companies. Her camel coat was cinched perfectly at the waist. The necklace Dante had fastened around her throat at the gala glittered against black cashmere. She smiled when Julian opened the door. "I need to speak with Sloane privately." "No," he said. Bianca's smile thinned. "This is family business." "Then behave like family and schedule an appointment." I stepped into the hallway. "Let her in." Julian looked at me. "The cameras stay on," I said. Bianca entered as though the townhouse already belonged to her. She glanced at the modest furniture and exposed brick. "So this is where Samuel hid his little contingency plan. You knew." "Dante told me enough. Enough to steal my proxy." She removed her gloves finger by finger. "You signed it. You buried it beneath charity forms. A Donna who cannot read what she signs should not control a shipping company." The contempt in her voice was familiar. For 4 years, Bianca had corrected the way I held a wine glass, the color of my dresses, the charities I supported, and the number of times I called my husband during meetings. Dante called it preparation. Bianca enjoyed it too much for that. I looked at the necklace. Did you enjoy your birthday? Her fingers rose to the diamonds. Dante was very generous. My son died while the auctioneer announced your house. For the first time, something uncertain crossed her face. Then it disappeared. The baby's death is tragic. It is not my fault you fell. You froze the medical account. Because you spent $12,000 the previous month without authorization. On the pediatric wing at St. Catherine's. Charity still requires discipline. I stepped closer. You reassigned my security detail. The gala required protection. I was 7 months pregnant and alone. You were inside the most secure residential building in Chicago. She used Dante's words almost exactly. My stomach turned. Did you know I called him? He told me you were creating another emergency. And what did you say? Bianca's eyes held mine. I told him not to reward manipulation. Julian shifted near the door. I raised one hand, stopping him. You heard me begging. I heard a woman who had discovered that being Donna does not mean the world stops whenever she feels frightened. The coldness of it stole my breath. Bianca leaned closer. Dante belongs to a dynasty, Sloane. You arrived with one suitcase and a convent education. I taught you how to survive beside him. You taught me to ask permission to buy tampons. Her mouth tightened. I taught you humility. No. You trained me to disappear. She looked toward the camera, then lowered her voice. Restore the accounts. Return to the penthouse. Give Dante another heir. In time, everyone will forget this embarrassment. The room became very still. Another heir? You are young. I slapped her. The sound cracked across the townhouse. Bianca staggered one step, more shocked than hurt. A red mark appeared across her cheek. Julian did not move. Neither did I. Say his name, I whispered. Bianca stared at me. What? My son. His name was Luca. Say it. She lifted one hand to her cheek. This is exactly the instability Dante warned us about. Get out. You will regret humiliating me. Get out before I repossess the car you drove here in and make you walk. Her expression transformed. For the first time, Bianca understood the balance had changed. She left without another word. The Bentley disappeared 30 minutes later when Lake Meridian's recovery company collected it from outside her apartment. By midnight, photographs of my slap appeared online. The headline read, Donna attacks grieving family friend after miscarriage. Below it, an unnamed source described me as unstable, jealous, and addicted to prescription sedatives. Dante called once. This time, I answered. Take the story down, I said. His voice was exhausted. I did not authorize it. But you know who did. Bianca is angry. So was I when my baby died. Somehow I managed not to leak lies to the press. Come home and I will handle her. You still think home is a bargaining chip. Sloane. Did you know she ordered the guards away? Silence. Dante? I authorized additional security for the gala. I did not know she would remove everyone from the tower. You gave her the authority. I made a mistake. A mistake is forgetting an anniversary. You built a system in which your mistress could decide whether your pregnant wife deserved emergency care. His breathing changed. She is not my mistress. Then what is she? He did not answer. That silence hurt less than it once would have. Take down the story, I said. Or tomorrow I publish the medical account records and the gala photographs side by side. You would expose family business? You taught me family only matters when it protects your power. I ended the call. 10 minutes later, the article disappeared. But the damage was done. Bianca had declared war in public. And unlike Dante, she knew exactly how far she was willing to go. Julian believed Luca's death could be investigated as more than a medical tragedy. I did not. No one pushed me, I said. We sat in the townhouse dining room surrounded by security logs, account statements, and hospital records. That is not the only form of responsibility, Julian replied. You called for help. People with a legal duty to respond deliberately refused. Because Dante told them I was dramatic. Because Bianca gave written instructions that no vehicle, guard, or family account could be used without her approval. He slid a printed email toward me. The subject line read, Donna Compliance Protocol. Bianca had sent it to building security 3 weeks before my fall. If I requested emergency transportation without visible unconsciousness, security had to contact her first. If I requested money outside the approved budget, the transfer required her code. If I called Dante during an event involving family allies, staff were instructed to redirect me. At the bottom, Dante had replied with one word. Approved. I stared at it. He had not imagined the blood on the staircase. But he had built the locked door between me and help. Julian pointed to the building log. Your fall occurred at 9:41. The concierge entered your floor at 9:49 but was ordered back downstairs by security. The first medical call was placed at 10:02. The private doctor requested authorization at 10:06. Bianca denied it at 10:09. Dante ended your call at 10:14. Omar entered the building at 10:27. You reached the hospital at 10:51. 48 minutes. My son's life had been measured in other people's obedience. Can they be charged? Possibly. Civilly, almost certainly. Criminally, the state would need to establish knowledge and intent. Bianca knew I was bleeding. We need proof. The concierge, a young man named Eric Molina, agreed to meet us in a coffee shop near DePaul University. He had quit Halston Tower the morning after my fall. Eric kept checking the windows while he spoke. I saw you on the lobby camera, he said. You were crawling toward the service elevator. My hands became cold. I had no memory of that. Why didn't you come upstairs? His face twisted. I tried. Security locked the private elevator. Who ordered it? Ms. Russo. Did you speak to her? She was on video call from the gala. I told her there was blood. Julian leaned forward. What did she say? Eric looked at me. She said Mrs. Valenti had used theatrical threats before and that nobody should disturb the dawn until the auction ended. The coffee shop sounds faded. Did Dante know? I heard Ms. Russo tell someone, she called him too, and he agrees. I don't know if that was true. It was true enough. Dante had hung up. Eric handed Julian a flash drive. I copied the lobby footage before I quit. The family's security chief ordered it deleted. The video showed me dragging myself across white marble. My dress was dark with blood. I reached the elevator panel and pressed the button repeatedly. Nothing happened. At 9:53, I collapsed. At 10:11, I moved again. At 10:21, the service door opened because a delivery worker entered from the garage. I crawled through before it closed. I watched without breathing. Julian stopped the video. Enough. Play it. Sloan. I need to remember. He played the rest. At 10:27, Omar found me beside the loading dock. He lifted me into his arms and ran. Julian drove me back to the townhouse in silence. When we arrived, a black envelope waited inside the mailbox. No stamp. No address. Inside was a photograph of Luca in the hospital bassinet. Someone had entered the restricted bereavement room after I left. Across the back, one sentence had been written in red ink. Restore what you stole, or the next body will be yours. Julian read it twice. We move you tonight. No. This is not a press leak. If I run every time Bianca threatens me, I am still living by her permission. Being difficult to kill is not submission. I looked at the photograph. Whoever had taken it had stood close enough to touch my son. My anger became something cleaner than rage. I want the hospital access logs. I will get them. And every payment Bianca made in the last 6 months. Already requested. Then move me somewhere secure. Julian's shoulders lowered slightly. Thank you. Do not mistake cooperation for obedience. I would never dare. For the first time since Luca died, I almost smiled. Julian moved me to a converted carriage house behind his family's property in Lake Forest. The house sat beyond iron gates and bare winter trees, far from Valenti territory. That night, I woke from a dream of the locked elevator. I found Julian sitting in the kitchen with a file open before him. Do you ever sleep? I asked. Occasionally. What did you find? He hesitated. Then turned the file toward me. The Montecito estate Bianca had received was not merely purchased through Lake Meridian funds. The deed had been placed in a shell corporation created 3 weeks before my fall. The corporation's second beneficiary was not Dante. It was Victor Russo, Bianca's father and the Valenti family's senior consigliere. Bianca was not only trying to take my place beside Dante. She and her father were preparing to take his empire too. Samuel Mercer had never been my biological father. He had been something more deliberate. He chose me. Julian told me the full story at dawn. 28 years earlier, Samuel and Dante's father, Lorenzo Valenti, created Lake Meridian Logistics as a legal bridge between two worlds. Lorenzo provided port influence. Samuel provided money, licenses, and the clean reputation needed to keep federal investigators away. When Lorenzo died, Samuel retained 31% of the company. The Valenti family controlled the rest through smaller shares divided among captains. Why leave it to me? I asked. Julian looked toward the windows. Snow had begun falling over the frozen garden. Because Samuel believed the Valentis killed your parents. My body went still. I was told they died in a fire. Their car exploded outside Milwaukee. The orphanage changed your surname for protection. Who were they? Julian opened a sealed envelope. A photograph showed a dark-haired woman holding a baby beside a man in a gray suit. The woman had my eyes. Your father was Adrian Quinn, Samuel's chief financial officer. Your mother was Elise. Adrian discovered that Victor Russo was using Lake Meridian containers to move weapons through legitimate cargo routes. He planned to report it to Lorenzo. Victor killed them. Samuel believed so. He could not prove it. My fingers touched the photograph. Did Dante know? Samuel told him before your wedding that Victor was dangerous. I do not know how much detail he shared. A memory returned. Dante refusing to invite Victor to our wedding ceremony, then allowing him at the reception after Bianca argued family unity mattered. Dante had once distrusted the Russos. Bianca spent years convincing him that only she understood the burden of leadership. I looked at Julian. The proxy gave Victor access to Lake Meridian routes. Through Bianca, yes. And the Montecito house? Likely an exit asset. Victor is moving money offshore. Why now? Because Dante's father is gone, Samuel is gone, and your trust was the last independent voting bloc. Once Bianca controlled you, Victor controlled the company. My marriage had been the final lock on a corporate vault. Dante may have married me for love. But he had allowed everyone around him to profit from keeping me ignorant. At noon, the Valenti family council demanded my appearance. The meeting took place at the old Marconi Club in River North, a private building where generations of men had decided which lives mattered. Julian opposed my attendance. I went anyway. 24 men sat around a dark walnut table. Bianca occupied the chair beside Dante. My chair. When I entered with Julian, conversation stopped. Dante rose. His gaze moved over my black dress, the visible hospital bandage beneath my sleeve, and the empty space on my left hand. Bianca remained seated. Victor Russo stood at the far end of the table. He was 63, silver-haired, elegant, and so calm that strangers often mistook him for kind. "Mrs. Valenti," he said. "We are relieved you are well enough to join us. My son was not as fortunate." Several men lowered their eyes. Victor did not. A tragedy. But the living still have responsibilities. I placed a folder on the table. "Then let us discuss them." Dante said quietly, "Sloane, sit beside me." I looked at Bianca in my chair. "It appears occupied." Bianca smiled. The council needed a functioning advisor. I pulled out the empty chair at the opposite end of the table and sat beside Julian. The message was clear. I was not returning to Dante's side. Bernard Cole began with payroll concerns. I approved ordinary operating funds immediately. Another captain demanded access to private aircraft. I denied it. Victor argued that Lake Meridian shares had always supported the family. "The trust exists to support legitimate business," I said. "Not birthday villas, offshore accounts, or weapons hidden in medical shipments." The room erupted. Dante turned toward Victor. "What weapons?" Victor's expression remained composed. A grieving woman repeating old accusations. I placed Samuel's records on the screen. Container numbers. Payments. Photographs. Then the original proxy bearing Bianca's witness signature. My father discovered this route before Victor Russo murdered him and my mother. Samuel protected the shares until I was old enough to expose it. Bianca stole my authorization and reopened the same network. Bianca stood. "That is insane." "Is it? The Montecito estate was placed in a company you share with your father." "Why?" Dante looked at her. "Bianca?" For the first time, her confidence cracked. "It was estate planning." "For whose estate?" he asked. Victor interrupted. "Dante, this is exactly why Sloane was never ready for power. She confuses private documents, grief, and conspiracy." Julian activated the screen again. Lobby footage showed me crawling toward the locked elevator. No one spoke. The video continued until Omar carried me away. I looked at the council. These are the men who claim they could not imagine anything happening to me because I was protected. This is what their protection looked like. Dante stared at the screen. His face had gone gray. Bianca whispered, "She was supposed to have guards." I turned toward her. "You removed them. For security at the gala. You denied the doctor after being told I was bleeding." Several captains shifted away from her. Dante's voice became dangerously quiet. "Did you?" Bianca looked at him. "You agreed she was manipulating you." I asked whether you denied the doctor. "I followed the protocol you approved." The word struck him. Dante had spent days searching for a single villain outside himself. Bianca had just reminded him he had signed the order. Victor rose. "This meeting is over." "No," I said. "It is beginning." I produced a final document. As majority holder of Lake Meridian's independent trust block, I called for a forensic audit and suspension of all directors linked to unauthorized routes. That included Victor, Bianca, and Dante. The room exploded with shouting. Dante did not speak. He looked at me as though he finally understood I was not fighting to return to him. I was fighting to remove him from the throne built on my silence. The vote passed by 1. Victor lost access to the ports. Bianca lost access to every account. Dante lost operational control of the legitimate company keeping his family solvent. As Julian and I left, Dante caught my arm in the hallway. His grip was gentle. I still looked down at his hand until he released me. "Did you come here to destroy me?" he asked. "No." Hope moved across his face. I continued. "I came to stop you from destroying anyone else." 3 days after the council vote, someone fired into Julian's car. We were leaving the Lake Forest property when the windshield shattered. Julian pulled me down before I heard the second shot. The car struck a stone wall. Security rushed from the gatehouse. Julian covered my body with his while glass fell across the seats. "Are you hit?" "No." Blood ran from a cut above his eyebrow. "You are." "Glass." He reached for the emergency radio. A third shot struck the rear door. The shooter disappeared into the wooded property across the road before Julian's guards reached the trees. Dante arrived at the hospital less than an hour later. He walked into the examination room without permission, Marco behind him. Julian was receiving stitches. I sat beside the bed. Dante stopped when he saw my hand holding Julian's. I had not realized I was doing it. Julian had. He did not release me until I chose to move. "You need to come under Valenti protection," Dante said. "Your protection locked an elevator while I bled." Victor ordered the shooting. "Can you prove it?" "I will." "Then bring evidence, not commands." Dante looked at Julian. "Leave us." Julian's mouth curved despite the stitches. "No." Marco moved forward. I stood between them. "Enough." Dante's gaze returned to me. "Sloane, he cannot keep you safe." He took a bullet through his windshield while using his body to cover mine. "You hung up. Do not compare yourselves." The sentence cut deeper than I intended. Dante looked away. "I went to Luca's grave today," he said. My anger remained, but grief moved beneath it. "There is no stone yet." I ordered one. "Cancel it." His eyes lifted. "He was my son." "Then you can ask before deciding how his grave should look." Dante closed his eyes briefly. When he opened them, the dawn was gone. Only the man remained. "What do you want from me?" "The divorce." His face hardened again. "No." "Then you do not want to repair anything. You want to restore possession. You are my wife. I was your wife when I begged for help." "I know. You were Bianca's Dawn first. She is not. Do not waste time defining the woman you chose over your child." He flinched. I continued. "Sign the divorce. Cooperate with the audit. Turn over Victor's routes. That is what I want. And then you go to him?" Dante looked at Julian. The old jealousy returned because jealousy was easier than accountability. "There is no him," I said. "There is only a woman leaving you." Julian's eyes moved toward me, but he remained silent. Dante stepped closer. "I love you." Once, those words would have made every cruelty seem temporary. Now I heard the missing sentence beneath them. "I love you, therefore you must stay." "Love that requires captivity is only fear wearing perfume," I said. Dante left without another word. That night, Julian and I returned to the carriage house under expanded security. He sat at the kitchen table while I cleaned dried blood near his temple. "You should have stayed down," he said. "You were bleeding. It was not fatal. You did not know that." He watched me carefully. "Neither did you." My fingers stopped. For weeks, Julian had existed as steadiness. Lawyer. Witness. Shield. In the hospital, when the bullet had shattered the glass, I had felt something beyond gratitude. Fear of losing him. That realization frightened me more than the shooter. I stepped back. I cannot do this. Julian did not pretend to misunderstand. You do not owe me anything. That is the problem. Explain. I spent 4 years learning that every kindness became a debt. Every gift became permission. Every protection became a cage. Julian leaned against the chair. Then I will never ask you to pay. You cannot promise that. I can promise to ask instead of assume. My eyes filled. He did not touch me. What do you want right now? He asked. The question was so simple that I almost could not answer. No one had asked me that in years. I want you to stay, I whispered. Here? Yes. In this room? Yes. May I hold your hand? I nodded. He did. Nothing more. The restraint broke something open inside me. At midnight, Marco Santori called Julian. He had found the hospital access log. The person who entered Luca's bereavement room and took the photograph used Dante's executive security credential. Only 3 people carried copies. Dante, Marco, and Bianca. But the hallway camera showed Bianca had not entered alone. Beside her was Dr. Levin, the Valenti family physician who had demanded the $1,000 retainer. The doctor who knew exactly how long my son could survive without treatment. Dr. Levin disappeared before investigators could question him. His home was empty. His accounts had been drained. A private plane registered to Victor Russo departed Chicago Executive Airport 40 minutes after the council vote. The flight plan listed Montreal. The plane landed in Detroit and vanished from tracking. Victor was cleaning the board. Marco met us secretly in the basement of St. Gabriel's Church. He had served Dante since they were teenagers. A scar crossed his jaw from a knife meant for the Don. For years, Marco had been one of the men who looked through me while calling me Donna. Now he could not meet my eyes. I should have answered your call, he said. Yes. He seemed startled that I did not forgive him immediately. Boss ordered everyone not to disturb the gala. And you obeyed. I thought you were safe. So did everyone. That is why no one checked. Marco placed a ledger on the table. Victor has been paying Levin for 3 years. The ledger recorded false medical certifications, sedatives, death certificates, and private treatments for injured soldiers. One payment stood out. $200,000 transferred to Levin the morning after Luca died. The note read, "Protocol completed. Contingency failed, ****. Julian frowned. What contingency? Marco looked at me. Dante was supposed to sign permanent control of Lake Meridian to Bianca at the gala. Victor prepared the papers as part of the birthday presentation. He did not sign, I said. No. Boss said business documents did not belong at a celebration. Dante had unknowingly saved himself by refusing to combine romance and contracts for one night. Marco continued. Victor expected your emergency to keep Dante distracted afterward. If you died, he could claim your trust through marital succession. If you survived but lost the baby, Bianca believed Dante would finally decide you were unfit to be Donna. My hands became numb. They planned the fall? I do not know. Julian turned a page in the ledger. A payment had been made to Halston Towers maintenance supervisor 2 days before my fall. The description read, North Stair Treatment. The marble staircase had been coated with a high-gloss sealant. The anti-slip runners had been removed for Bianca's photographer, who planned to use the penthouse for a birthday portrait before the gala. The maintenance supervisor warned that the surface was unsafe. Bianca ordered the work completed anyway. She had not pushed me. She had created the fall, removed the guards, denied the doctor, and convinced Dante that my terror was manipulation. Then she waited to see whether I died. A church door opened behind us. Dante entered. Marco stood immediately. "Boss. Leave." Marco looked at me. I nodded. He and Julian moved toward the far end of the basement but stayed within view. Dante approached the table. He had seen the ledger. His face contained a fury so quiet it frightened even me. "I found Levin," he said. "Where?" "A safe house outside Gary." "Alive?" Dante did not answer directly. He confessed before federal agents arrived. I understood what the silence meant and hated that part of me felt no pity. Dante placed a recorder on the table. Levin's voice filled the church basement. Bianca had called him at 9:48. She told him I had fallen but was conscious. He advised immediate transport. Bianca ordered him to wait for payment authorization. At 10:08, he warned her the baby might die. She asked whether I would survive. Levin said probably. Bianca replied, "Then Dante will still have a wife. We can solve the heir problem later." I stopped the recording. The room swayed. Dante moved toward me. I stepped back. He froze. "Sloane. Do not touch me." His hands fell. "I will destroy her. That will not bring Luca back. She used me. You gave her everything she needed." The word struck him harder than accusation. "I did not know. You knew I was bleeding. I thought. You thought what was easiest. You believed the woman flattering your authority instead of the wife begging for her child." Dante's eyes filled. "I cannot live with this." "You will." "How?" "The same way I do. One morning after another." He bowed his head. "Tell me what punishment is enough." "There is none." "Then tell me how to help you." "Sign the divorce." His eyes closed. For several seconds, he stood in silence. Then he nodded. "I will." The answer should have brought relief. Instead, grief moved through me again. I had loved him for years. Part of me had waited for him to choose me. He finally did only after there was nothing left to save. Dante pushed the recorder toward Julian. "Victor has a warehouse on South Calumet Avenue. Bianca is there. So are the original route ledgers and enough cash to disappear." Julian looked at him. "Why tell us?" "Because Victor is planning to take Sloane before sunrise." Dante turned toward me. "He cannot access the trust without your biometric authorization." The shooting had not been intended only to frighten me. It had been the first attempt to capture me. Dante continued. "Bianca believes she can still fix everything if you sign." "I won't." "I know." His voice became soft. "That is why she will hurt you until you do." The police raid on the Calumet warehouse found nothing. Victor had moved the cash, records, and vehicles less than an hour before agents arrived. Bianca disappeared. For 6 days, Chicago waited. The newspapers called it a Valenti civil war. Rival crews tested boundaries near the ports. Family captains demanded Dante resume control. Federal investigators circled Lake Meridian. Employees worried that every legal business would collapse beneath the weight of the criminal one. I refused to restore Dante's authority. Instead, Julian and I separated the legitimate companies from the family accounts. Payroll continued. Pensions were protected. The Palisade Hotel remained open under independent management. The private clubs, shell companies, and unexplained distributions stayed frozen. For the first time, men who had spent decades profiting from the Valenti name had to submit receipts. They hated me. Ordinary employees did not. Letters arrived from hotel maids, dockworkers, and drivers who had never received overtime because family executives treated labor laws as suggestions. One letter came from Eric Molina, the concierge who tried to help me. My mother says you should know that survival is not selfish. I kept it beside Luca's photograph. On the 7th day, Bianca returned publicly. She appeared at the annual Valenti Foundation Winter Gala wearing red. The event took place in the Grand Exchange Ballroom, beneath chandeliers and painted ceilings, with reporters gathered outside. Bianca walked in beside Victor as though neither was wanted by federal agents. Their attorneys had negotiated temporary surrender terms. They claimed the accusations were financial misunderstandings created by an unstable widow-in-waiting. Dante still had not announced our separation. Bianca counted on that silence. She took the stage and spoke about loyalty. About tradition. About protecting the family from outsiders who wanted to dismantle generations of work. Then she looked directly at me. I stood at the rear of the ballroom with Julian. Dante occupied the central table alone. Some people receive a title and mistake it for character, Bianca said into the microphone. Some women believe suffering gives them the right to punish thousands of innocent families. Applause rose from Victor's allies. Bianca smiled. But a true Donna does not abandon her husband during grief. She does not place private pain above the family. Dante stood. The ballroom quieted. Bianca looked at him with expectation. He walked onto the stage. For one terrible second, I wondered whether he would choose her again. Dante took the microphone. A true Don does not make his wife beg for permission to survive. Bianca's smile vanished. Dante continued. Sloane did not abandon this family. I abandoned her first. Whispers spread through the room. He looked toward me. Our son died because I allowed another person to decide whether my wife's fear deserved belief. I approved the rules that trapped her. I ignored the call that could have saved him. His voice broke, but he continued. No tradition excuses that. No title erases it. Victor rose from his table. Dante, think carefully. I should have done that months ago. Dante placed a signed document on the podium. Our divorce agreement. He had surrendered every claim to my trust, the penthouse, and Luca's estate. He also resigned operational control of Lake Meridian pending the audit. The ballroom erupted. Bianca seized his arm. You are letting her destroy you. Dante looked at her hand until she released him. You let my son die. You hung up. The sentence hit him. Bianca smiled cruelly. Do not pretend this is all mine. I told you she was manipulative, and you believed me because you wanted to. You were tired of her questions. Tired of her tears. Tired of feeling guilty every time you chose me. Dante's face went white. She turned toward the room. He bought the house. He approved the accounts. He signed the compliance order. I only gave him permission to become the man he already was. No one applauded now. I walked toward the stage. Julian stayed several steps behind. Bianca watched me approach. Here comes the orphan queen. No, I said. Just the owner of the account that paid for your dress. A few people laughed nervously. I handed the event technician a drive. The ballroom screens lit with the hospital lobby footage. Then Levin's confession. Then the maintenance payment. Then the photograph taken beside Luca's body. Bianca's face changed as the evidence played. Victor moved toward the exit. Federal agents entered through every ballroom door. Julian had coordinated the warrants with the U.S. Attorney's office. Victor reached inside his jacket. Dante's men drew weapons. Agents shouted. For 1 second, the ballroom balanced on the edge of a massacre. I stepped between the two sides. No one fires. Victor laughed. You think they answer to you? I looked at the captains. Every legal paycheck clears through Lake Meridian tomorrow. Any man who draws a weapon in this room loses his family's income before sunrise. One by one, the guns lowered. Victor's face filled with hatred. He had spent his life believing fear was the only reliable currency. He had never imagined payroll could be stronger. Agents arrested him. Bianca remained beside the stage. You have nothing without Dante, she said to me. I looked around the ballroom. At the workers standing near service doors. At Julian. At the divorce agreement beneath Dante's hand. At the captains who had lowered their weapons because I gave them a future more stable than war. That was the lie you needed me to believe, I said. Bianca smiled suddenly. Then the ballroom lights went out. Someone grabbed me from behind. A cloth covered my mouth. The last thing I heard was Julian shouting my name. I woke tied to a chair beneath a single industrial light. The air smelled of oil, cold metal, and lake water. My wrists were bound behind me. Tape covered my mouth. Pain pulsed through my incision where someone had dragged me across the floor. Bianca sat on a crate 10 feet away. Her red gala dress was torn near the shoulder. She had removed the diamonds and replaced her heels with black boots. Victor always said the dramatic exit was the most dangerous moment, she said. I looked around. We were inside a warehouse, but not Calumet. Through a dirty window, I could see the red lights of cranes and a section of frozen river. Lake Meridian's old Terminal 4. Bianca stood and removed the tape from my mouth. Scream if you like. The walls were built for machinery. Victor was arrested. He expected to be. The important accounts are already elsewhere. She held up a tablet. A biometric authorization screen glowed. You will restore the proxy, authorize the offshore transfer, and sign a statement that Dante's grief made him violent. No. Bianca sighed. You still think courage means refusing before you understand the cost. She opened a video feed. Julian was kneeling on the warehouse floor in another room, blood on his face, a gun pointed at the back of his head. My heart stopped. How? He followed the van. Very heroic. Very predictable. Let him go. Sign. I looked at the screen. Julian lifted his head. He could not hear me, but his eyes found the hidden camera. He shook his head once. Do not sign. Bianca noticed. Men enjoy dying nobly when women are foolish enough to admire it. Dante would do the same. Dante is not here. He will be. I sent him the location. I understood. Bianca wanted all three of us inside one building. She intended to kill Julian, frame Dante, and force my authorization before I died. You planned this from the beginning, I said. Not this version. She walked around me. I planned to marry Dante after you failed as Donna. The fall was supposed to frighten you. Losing the baby was unfortunate, but useful. Grieving women are easy to discredit. You took a photograph of my son. Leverage requires intimacy. The calm way she said it removed the last of my fear. Some people could not be reached by grief because they understood other lives only as instruments. Dante never loved you, I said. Her expression changed. There it was. The wound beneath all her control. He chose me every time it mattered. He chose your approval. That is not the same thing. Bianca struck me. My lip split. Sign. No. She pressed a knife beneath my chin. You think Julian will still want you after he watches you sacrifice him for money? This was never about money. Everything is about money. No. Money is only how people like you measure control. A distant explosion shook the warehouse. Gunfire followed. Bianca looked toward the door. The video feed showing Julian went dark. She grabbed my hair. "Authorize it now." The warehouse door burst open. Dante entered through smoke with Marco behind him. Two of Bianca's guards fired. Dante pulled me and the chair sideways as bullets struck the concrete. Marco returned fire. Bianca ran toward the loading platform carrying the tablet. Dante cut the rope from my wrists. "Can you stand?" "Julian." Marco's men found him. "Is he alive?" "Yes." Relief nearly dropped me to the floor. Dante saw it. Pain crossed his face, but he pushed it aside. "Go to the east exit. Bianca has the trust access. She cannot use it without you. She has my fingerprint from the council records. Voice confirmation. She recorded me at the gala." Dante swore. Bianca reached a control panel above the loading bay. The platform began moving toward an open cargo container. Inside were servers, ledgers, cash, and weapons. A tugboat waited beyond the dock. She intended to move the entire operation onto the river. I ran after her. Dante caught my arm. "No." I pulled free. "You do not decide for me anymore." He released me immediately. That small act mattered more than every promise he had made since Luca died. We pursued Bianca together. She reached the container first and activated the authorization file. My recorded voice played from the tablet. "I, Sloan Mercer Valenti, authorize." I shouted, revocation phrase, "Samuel chose the living." The screen flashed red. Julian had added an emergency phrase to the trust after the shooting. All remote authorizations locked. Bianca screamed and threw the tablet. Then she raised a gun. Dante stepped between us. The shot struck his shoulder. He fell against the rail. I grabbed the emergency chain hanging beside the platform and pulled. The cargo mechanism stopped violently. Bianca lost her balance. She fell onto the container roof, the gun sliding toward the river. I climbed onto the platform. She looked up at me. "Help me." One of her hands clung to the edge above the dark water. For 1 second, I saw the staircase. The locked elevator. My son's photograph in her hand. I could have stepped back. No one would have blamed me. Instead, I reached down and caught her wrist. Bianca stared at me. "Why?" "Because I will not become you." Federal agents and Marco's men reached the platform. They pulled her up and placed her in handcuffs. I turned toward Dante. He sat against the railing, blood spreading across his shirt. "Sloan," he said. I knelt beside him and pressed my hands over the wound. His eyes searched mine. "I saved you." The words were weak, almost childlike. He wanted one act to balance the scale. I held pressure on the wound until medics arrived. "Yes," I said. "You did." Hope appeared. I did not lie to preserve it. And it does not erase what came before. His eyes closed. A tear moved down his face. "I know." For the first time, I believed him. Luca had already been buried by the time the warehouse blood dried from my hands. Dante ordered a private service while I was still under observation after the kidnapping. He later claimed he believed he was protecting me from reporters, federal agents, and captains who would turn a child's coffin into proof of loyalty. The result was the same. My son was lowered into the ground while I lay beneath hospital lights, and another decision was made without me. When I learned, I walked out of the clinic wearing borrowed shoes. Julian followed me to the parking lot. "Where are you going?" "The cemetery." "You were sedated 6 hours ago." "I was sedated when they buried my son too." Apparently that did not stop anyone. He did not tell me to calm down. He opened the passenger door. Luca's grave stood beneath a young maple tree at St. Michael's Cemetery, in the section reserved for Valenti blood. Black cars lined the road. White roses covered the earth. Men in dark coats stood in small groups speaking quietly. Dante sat alone on a stone bench with his injured arm in a sling. He rose when he saw me. Sloane. I looked at the fresh ground. A temporary marker read, Luca Dante Valenti. My name appeared nowhere. Who chose that? I asked. Dante followed my gaze. The family priest needed a name for the record. His name was Luca Mercer Valenti. I can change it. You can stop deciding first and apologizing later. Several captains turned away, pretending not to hear. Dante stepped closer, then stopped beyond my reach. You are right. The words did not repair anything. But they were the first words he offered without defense. I knelt beside the grave. The cold moved through my knees. I placed my palm against the loose earth and remembered Luca's weight in my arms. 4 pounds and 9 ounces. Too light to bend my elbows with effort. Heavy enough to divide my life into before and after. I'm sorry, I whispered. Not because I had failed him. The therapist at the clinic had made me repeat that until I could say it without choking. I was sorry that his brief life had been surrounded by adults who treated care as hierarchy. Sorry that he entered a family more loyal to rules than to a frightened mother's voice. Sorry that I could not give him the ordinary beginning he deserved. Dante lowered himself to the ground on the other side of the grave. For once, he did not speak. We sat there as two parents rather than Don and Donna. The family priest eventually approached. Mr. Valenti, the council is waiting. Dante did not look away from the grave. They can continue waiting. The priest glanced at me. There are matters of succession. I stood slowly. My child has been dead for 9 days, and your first concern at his grave is succession? The priest reddened. I meant no disrespect. Then learn what respect sounds like before you use the word again. Dante's captain stared. Months earlier, I would have worried that I embarrassed him. Now I watched Dante dismiss the priest with a single look. What does the council want? I asked. Dante's expression tightened. Victor's arrest left 5 crews without leadership. Some captains want me restored. Others want Marco. A few want the legal companies divided before federal seizure. And what do you want? He looked toward Luca's grave. I want one decision that does not create another coffin. The answer sounded sincere. Sincerity was no longer enough for me. Then resign, I said. The men nearest us stopped pretending not to listen. Dante's face became still. The family will fracture. It already has. Rivals will move into our neighborhoods. Then cooperate with the city and federal task force instead of pretending private violence keeps ordinary people safe. You know what happens when a Don appears weak. Yes. His wife learns she owns the company he needs. A sound escaped Marco that might have been a cough hiding a laugh. Dante looked at me for a long time. Come to the council, he said. I am not your advisor. Come as Lake Meridian's chair. It was the first time he named my authority without making it part of his. The council met that evening at Marconi Club. The same men who had once questioned whether an orphan could sit beside Dante now waited for me before beginning. Bianca's chair remained empty. Victor's had been removed. Dante stood at the head of the table. His sling was visible beneath his jacket. The Valenti criminal organization ends tonight, he said. The room erupted before he finished. One captain struck the table. Another accused him of surrendering generations of sacrifice. A third warned that federal cooperation would make every soldier a target. Dante waited until the shouting weakened. My son died because this organization taught every person around my wife that obeying rank mattered more than responding to blood on the floor. That was Bianca, someone said. It was me, Dante replied. The room quieted. I signed the policy. I dismissed the call. I rewarded loyalty that protected my pride and punished anyone who questioned my judgment. Bianca exploited what I built, but she did not build it alone. I watched the men absorb something they had never heard from a Don. Responsibility without an execution attached. Dante placed folders before each captain. The agreement separated legal employees, pensions, and businesses from all crew activity. Captains could surrender illegal assets, enter cooperation discussions, and receive legal assistance for families uninvolved in crimes. Anyone who refused would lose access to Lake Meridian property immediately. Bernard Cole looked at me. And you approve this? I approved protection for workers and children, I said. I did not approve immunity for men who harmed people. You would hand family members to the government. You handed my son to death because no one wanted to challenge an order. Do not ask me to worship the word family. Several captains signed that night. Others walked out. 2 attempted to move weapons from a Lake Meridian warehouse before dawn and were arrested by federal agents waiting at the gate. Marco agreed to oversee the temporary security transition only if every operation was documented and reviewed by an independent board. The old organization did not disappear in one meeting. Power rarely died cleanly. But for the first time, its leaders knew the money, buildings, and workers would no longer hide them. After the council adjourned, Dante remained alone at the table. I gathered my files. Sloan. I stopped. He removed a key from his pocket and placed it before me. The penthouse. Halston Tower is held through Lake Meridian, he said. It belongs to your trust. I do not want to live there. I know. Then why give me the key? Because it should be your decision what happens to it. I picked it up. The brass felt ordinary in my palm. For years, the penthouse had seemed like Dante's castle. Every lock answered to his fingerprint. Every employee answered to Bianca. I had lived inside property that legally depended on me while believing I was a guest who could be removed. I am turning it into temporary housing, I said. Dante's eyebrows lifted. For whom? Women whose husbands control their money, documents, or transportation. He looked down. That is appropriate. It is not punishment. I know. Do you? Dante raised his eyes. Punishment would keep the apartment empty, so I had to imagine you in every room. You are making it useful. I closed my hand around the key. He had finally learned to recognize the difference between revenge and consequence. Too late for us. Perhaps not too late for the people who would come after. Before leaving, I placed the temporary cemetery marker on the table. I had removed it from Luca's grave. We choose the permanent stone together, I said. Dante touched the incorrect name. Luca Mercer Valenti. Yes. And no family crest. I looked at him. Why? Because he should not have to carry what we did with that name. For the first time since the hospital, I reached across the table and touched Dante's hand. Not as forgiveness. Not as a promise. As recognition that we had both loved the same child, even if one of us had learned too late that love without action could still kill. Then I let go. Dante survived. The bullet shattered his collarbone but missed the artery. He spent 2 weeks at St. Catherine Medical Center under federal guard. I visited once. Not as his wife. As Luca's mother. The room was quiet when I entered. Dante looked smaller without his tailored suits, weapons, and men waiting outside the door. Our signed divorce agreement lay on the table beside him. You filed it, I said. This morning. Thank you. He laughed without humor. "For years of marriage, and the first thing you thank me for is ending it. It is the first gift you gave without deciding what I should do with it." He looked toward the window. Snow covered the city below. The U.S. attorney offered a cooperation agreement. Julian told me, "If I turn over the remaining routes, captains, and public officials, I serve 8 to 12 years. And if you do not? Life, possibly. Or I keep the family together long enough to die before trial." The old Dante might have said it with pride. This version sounded tired. "What will you choose?" "I already signed." He handed over the cooperation papers. The Valenti criminal organization would fracture. The legitimate businesses would remain under Lake Meridian's independent board. Dante would testify against Victor, Bianca, Levin's network, and corrupt officials who had protected them. "Why?" I asked. "Because Luca died inside a system I called protection." He swallowed. "If I preserve that system, then I choose it over him again." I sat beside the bed. For several minutes, we shared silence. "I loved you," he said. "I know. That is not forgiveness." "No. Will it ever be?" I thought about the word. Forgiveness had been used against me for years. A proper wife forgave. A Donna understood. An orphan should be grateful. "Perhaps one day I will stop carrying anger," I said. "That does not mean I will return." Dante nodded. "Julian loves you. That is between Julian and me. I hated him before I met him. Because Samuel trusted him? Because he spoke to you as though your answer mattered." The honesty surprised me. Dante continued. "I thought that made him weak. And now? Now I know I was afraid you would learn the difference." I stood. Dante reached toward me, then stopped before touching. "May I ask one thing?" "You may ask." "Let me pay for Luca's stone." I looked at him. "We choose it together." His face broke. "All right." That was the last private conversation we had before his sentencing. Victor Russo received 38 years for racketeering, weapons trafficking, attempted kidnapping, and conspiracy. Bianca faced charges for attempted murder, unlawful imprisonment, financial fraud, obstruction, and criminal negligence contributing to Luca's death. At trial, she claimed Dante manipulated her. The jury watched the lobby footage. They listened to Levin's confession. They saw the photograph she took beside my son. No one believed her. She received 46 years. The newspapers called it the fall of a dynasty. They were wrong. Dynasties did not fall when men went to prison. They fell when the people they controlled stopped believing power made cruelty inevitable. Lake Meridian employees elected 2 worker representatives to the board. We sold the Palisade Hotel's private family floor and used the money to repay stolen pensions. Halston Towers' penthouse became a residential center for women leaving coercive marriages. The Montecito estate was seized before Bianca ever slept there. I sold it and created the Luca Mercer Emergency Fund. No pregnant woman in Cook County would again need a private authorization code to reach urgent care through any clinic receiving our money. The first time the fund paid a transportation bill, I sat in my office and cried for an hour. Not because it healed me. Because somewhere, another mother reached the hospital before the 48th minute. My divorce became final 11 months after Luca died. The judge asked whether I wished to retain the name Valenti. "No," I said. I became Sloan Mercer again. Not Quinn, the name of parents I never knew. Not Valenti, the name of the man I had loved. Mercer was the name of the person who chose to protect my future without demanding ownership of it. Julian waited outside the courthouse. He wore a navy coat and held 2 paper cups of coffee. "Congratulations feels inappropriate," he said. "Accurate, though." He handed me a cup. We walked toward Daly Plaza while winter wind moved between the buildings. For months, our relationship had remained suspended between intimacy and restraint. Julian stayed when I asked. Left when I needed distance. He never treated the warehouse rescue as a debt. He never mentioned the night I held his hand in the hospital unless I did first. Sometimes that patience frustrated me. Sometimes it saved me. At the edge of the plaza, I stopped. Are you ever going to ask me out? Julian nearly dropped his coffee. You told me you needed time. I did. Has that changed? I am standing outside my divorce hearing asking whether you plan to invite me to dinner. I prefer clear evidence. I laughed. The sound surprised me. It had been months since laughter arrived without guilt. Julian looked at me with quiet warmth. Sloane Mercer, would you have dinner with me Friday evening? Where? You may choose. That is a dangerous amount of freedom. I have been warned. We went to a small Italian restaurant in Andersonville where no one knew my former title. The owner seated us near the kitchen. No guard stood outside. No one tasted my wine first. Julian asked what I wanted and believed the answer. Halfway through dinner, I realized I was waiting for him to tell me which entree was more appropriate. He did not. What? He asked. Nothing. That is usually something. I looked at the menu. Dante ordered for me. Bianca chose my clothes. The house manager controlled my calendar. I do not remember the last time I selected an ordinary dinner without someone explaining what it meant about me. Julian placed his menu down. What do you want? The question still carried power. I read every item slowly. The truffle pasta. Excellent. You hate mushrooms. I am not eating your dinner. Such a small answer. Such a different world. Afterward, we walked along Clark Street beneath strings of winter lights. Julian stopped outside a bookstore. May I kiss you? I looked at him. Dante had first kissed me after telling a room full of men I would become his wife. He had made the future sound decided, and I had mistaken certainty for devotion. Julian waited inside the uncertainty. Yes, I said. His hand touched my face carefully. The kiss was warm, slow, and free of promises neither of us could yet keep. When we separated, he did not ask what it meant. Neither did I. For once, a moment could simply belong to me without becoming a contract. 3 years later, Dante testified in federal court against the last Valenti captain. I watched from the back row. His hair had begun to gray near the temples. Prison had sharpened his face and removed the physical ease of a man who once believed every door would open before he reached it. He saw me. Then he saw Julian beside me. Dante did not look away. After the hearing, a marshal allowed us 5 minutes in a private conference room. Julian waited outside. Dante sat across from me with his hands cuffed to a chain around his waist. You look well, he said. I am. Lake Meridian's numbers are better than when I ran it. We stopped stealing from it. A faint smile touched his mouth. That helps. I placed a photograph on the table. Luca's gravestone stood beneath a young maple tree. The inscription was simple. Luca Mercer Valenti. Loved before he was known. Dante traced the photograph with one finger. Thank you for using both names. He belonged to both of us. Tears filled his eyes. Do you hate me? I considered the question. Not every day. He nodded as though that was more mercy than he expected. And Julian? We are building a life. Marriage? Perhaps. Dante looked toward the door. He waited. Yes. I would have demanded an answer. I know. He lowered his head. I thought being Don meant removing uncertainty. It meant making everyone else carry it for you. You always saw too clearly. No. I learned late. The marshal knocked once. Dante looked at me. Sloane, I am sorry. He had apologized many times before. At the penthouse. In the hospital. Through letters. This time, he did not follow the words with a request. No forgiveness. No return. No reassurance that he was still a good man. Only the apology. I know, I said. Then I left. Outside, Julian stood beneath the courthouse columns. He did not ask what Dante said. He held out my coat. Lunch? I am paying. You paid last time. I own a shipping company. You are a humble attorney. My billing department disputes that description. We walked toward the street. At the corner, a woman approached carrying a sleeping infant and a folder from the Luca Mercer Emergency Fund. She recognized me. Mrs. Mercer? Sloane is fine. Her eyes filled. Your program paid for the ambulance when my insurance refused the transfer. My daughter was born 6 weeks early. She looked down at the baby. Her name is Hope. I touched the edge of the pink blanket. For a moment, the city disappeared. I saw Luca. Not as a body in my arms. As the child whose brief life had become a door for someone else. She is beautiful, I said. The woman thanked me and walked away. Julian stood quietly beside me. I took his hand. I am ready, I said. For lunch? For more than lunch. He searched my face. Tell me what that means to you. Even after 3 years, he still asked. It means I want a home with you. Not a title. Not protection I cannot refuse. A home where no one needs permission to leave. Julian's eyes softened. I want that too. And if we marry, I keep my name. Of course. Separate accounts. Agreed. No one controls my calendar. I would not survive trying. I laughed and kissed him on the courthouse steps. People passed around us without knowing I had once been called Donna by men who would not lend me $1,000. They did not know I had owned the company paying for their champagne. They did not know I had lost a son, a marriage, and an entire idea of love before I learned that freedom was not something another person handed back. Freedom was the decision to stop negotiating with the cage. Julian and I married the following autumn at the Lake Forest property. There were 40 guests. No armed guards. No captains. No family council deciding whether my dress showed enough dignity. Omar drove me to the ceremony in the same black sedan he used the night Luca died. I had offered to replace it years earlier. He refused. This car knows how to get a woman out, he said. Eric Molina attended with his mother. Marco came alone and stood near the back. He had left organized crime, entered witness protection for a time, and later began working in port security compliance. At the ceremony, Julian did not promise to protect me from the world. He promised to listen when I described it. I did not promise obedience. I promised honesty, including the kind that could end a relationship rather than preserve a lie. Before exchanging rings, we walked together to the maple tree near the garden. A small silver plaque beneath it carried Luca's name. Wind moved through the branches. For years, I had imagined my son's final moments as a locked room. The call ending. The elevator refusing to open. The heartbeat stopping while a ballroom applauded Bianca's mansion. Those memories never vanished. They changed shape. The Luca Mercer Emergency Fund now operated in 4 states. Lake Meridian employed former victims of financial coercion through a legal apprenticeship program. Halston Towers penthouse housed women who arrived with nothing but one suitcase. Inside the former study where Dante once discussed my training, a sign now hung above the door. No one needs permission to leave. After the wedding, Julian and I stood alone beside the lake. "Do you miss being Donna?" he asked. I looked at him. "I miss parts of the woman I was before the title." "Which parts?" "The woman who believed love could be safe." Julian took my hand. "Does she believe it now?" I considered the question. "She believes love is not automatically safe." "That sounds less romantic." "It is more honest." He smiled. I continued. "Love becomes safe when both people are free enough to say no." Behind us, our guests laughed beneath strings of warm lights. No one lowered their voice when I entered. No one called me an orphan as though survival were a defect. No one controlled the money in my purse, the clothes on my body, or the doors I could open. Dante once told me a proper Donna represented the honor of her husband. Bianca told me discipline would earn the family's respect. They were both wrong. Honor was not a title granted by powerful men. It was what remained when fear no longer made your choices. I had crawled across marble while an empire ignored me. Then I stood up and discovered the empire had been breathing through my name all along. Dante lost a wife because he believed possession was permanent. Bianca lost a throne because she mistook cruelty for strength. Victor lost his dynasty because he never understood that money could belong to the person he had dismissed as powerless. And I lost my son. Nothing would ever make that loss fair. But Luca's death was no longer the moment my life ended. It was the last night anyone decided what my life was worth. Julian squeezed my hand. "Ready to go home?" I looked toward the house we had chosen together. A home with 2 sets of keys. 2 separate offices. 1 shared kitchen. And only one permanent rule. Either of us could leave. Neither of us wanted to. "Yes," I said. This time, the word belonged entirely to me.